In January 2026, the head of Claude Code at Anthropic said he hasn't written a single line of code by hand in over 2 months. Now, across the whole company, 70 to 90% of their code is completely AI written. Meanwhile, employment for developers aged 22 to 25 is down nearly 20% since ChatGPT launched, and entry-level job postings have dropped anywhere from 46 to 67%, depending on who's counting. Now, AI isn't coming for software engineering, it has already arrived. So here's what the state of software engineering actually looks like in 2026, and more importantly, what nobody's talking about. Now, what I'm going to share in this video isn't just a bunch of stats. This is my personal experience of what I've noticed talking with hundreds of different developers that are at the forefront of AI, that are seniors, that are juniors, across every single discipline. Now, what I've noticed first of all is that the role of a software engineer is shifting from a producer to a supervisor. Now, what that means is we're no longer really responsible for writing massive amounts of code. AI code generation has gotten so good even in just the past few months that if you're not using AI, you really are just falling behind and really not productive at all compared to the developers who do utilize it. This means that you do need to use AI tools, you're going to AI generate a lot of your code, and what's more important is being able to understand what good actually looks like. Yes, we can all generate massive amounts of code, but being able to have that experience to understand what code is good, what code is bad, and what's going to be maintainable and just proper for the future is really the skill that matters more. Now, this is something that you can only develop with a lot of experience, but we're in this kind of tricky place where in order to get the experience, you really should be writing the code by hand, but you can't write the code by hand because then you're going to be too slow and you're not going to be productive compared to the other engineers. This will lead me to another point I want to talk about later in the video, but it's a really weird time where in order to get the experience required to generate a bunch of productive AI code, you need to have written code manually, but you just can't write code manually because then you're so slow compared to everyone else. This is a really interesting dilemma, and as someone who teaches a lot of coding concepts, I'm kind of in the middle here on what I recommend to people learning. Should you purely just use AI? Should you actually write or learn the fundamentals from scratch? Should you do a combination? Of course, it's somewhere in between, but it's a really tricky place, especially for junior developers. And to be honest with you, I don't know what the right answer is, and I'd be curious to hear what you think in the comments down below. Now, the next major trend that I'm noticing is more related to the product side of things, but that's something called agent experience, or AX. Now, we used to have UX, right, which was user experience, but now agents are more and more actually consuming the software that we use on an everyday basis. For example, I have like a Monday dashboard or an Asana dashboard or my Google Drive, and rarely now am I actually going in there and manually doing something. I'm purely communicating with an AI agent that then takes the action for me. Now, this is becoming a more and more important design discipline and a design decision that teams have to consider. How do I design my software in a way such that AI agents can consume it and use it? And we've seen that with MCP, we're seeing that with plugins, adapters, connecting to tools like OpenClaw, and this is becoming more and more popular in the industry, and something that I think is going to be a pretty interesting kind of avenue to dive into, or something where there could actually be a lot of jobs where you're head of agent experience, right? Or you're an agent experience developer who's really responsible for making sure that this software is adaptable or usable with AI agents. All of the major tools out there are coming out with MCPs, updating them quickly, and even having, automatic prompts that you could just copy and paste into your tool that will set everything up for you. Really interesting trend. Again, curious to know what you guys think about this, but something I'm noticing a lot that's been ramping up just over the past few months. Now, I have a few other more dramatic insights that I want to share, but quickly, I need to give a shout out to today's sponsor, Nexos AI. Now, if you're anything like me, you probably have 5 different AI subscriptions open right now. ChatGPT for one thing, Claude for another, Gemini when you need long context, plus whatever new model dropped last week, right? Now, it's a mess, and you're paying for all of them, somewhere between $60 and $200 a month when you add them all up. Now, Nexos AI fixes that. It's one platform that gives you access to every major model like GPT, Claude, Gemini, all of them through a single interface and a single subscription. So there's no more tab switching, no more repasting the same context into 3 different tools, and no more 5 different separate bills. Now, the way I actually use it is pretty simple. I pick the model for the job and it just runs. So writing your strategy, I'm using Claude. Research with a ton of source material, I'm using Gemini. Quick answers, I'm going to GPT. Now, it just takes 2 seconds to switch the model, and you can do it all in one place. Now, the feature that I keep coming back to is deep research. You give it a topic, it goes out and pulls from the web and hands you back a fully cited report. What used to take me 2 hours of Googling, reading, and compiling now takes me about 3 minutes just waiting for the AI to respond. Now, it's currently replaced at least 3 of the AI tools that I had in my stack. Now, they also have no-code AI agents where you can describe a task in plain language and it builds an agent that does it on repeat. They also have zero training on your data and are fully compliant with things like SOC 2, GDPR, and more. Now, people are saving up to $200 a month by switching to Nexos AI because the one plan replaces everything they were paying for separately. And right now, you can try it for free for 7 days. I'll leave the link in the description, and you can use the code TWT for 10% off after your trial. Now, it takes 2 minutes to set up. It's genuinely worth checking out. Now, let's get back to the video. Now, the next major thing that I'm noticing is that it feels like we're slowly losing engineering talent. Now, what I mean by that is even in just the past few months, we've seen all kinds of breaches, hacks, exploits. It seems like software is getting worse and worse quality, and compound that with the fact that less and less junior devs are getting hired and getting trained, and more seniors are retiring, as always happens. We're kind of in this weird position where in order to be useful to a company, you need to be a senior engineer. So these companies are not really hiring juniors that much. As we've seen, it's really difficult in the job market, especially as a new grad. But then when the seniors start leaving, there's nobody to replace them. Now, this hasn't become a massive problem yet, but obviously it's something that I think is going to compound over time, where these companies aren't investing in the younger talent. They're not losing the money to eventually make it back in the future. And as these talented developers leave this company, switch to another one, retire, whatever it may be, we don't have any replacement. Now, this is also compounded with the fact that now no one is really learning or writing code anymore. They're just going to an AI prompt, right? They're saying, hey, this is what I want you to do. It's generating a bunch of code. They're quickly reviewing it and then they're pushing it into production. This means that we no longer having all of this innovation, all of these new solutions that we had before, where people actually had to sit there and deeply think about problems. Instead, we're just really quickly spitting out a ton of LLM generated code and really just reusing the same code that we've had for years. Now, this has always been the major problem with LLMs. They're good at predicting text. They do that based on their training data, which means they can only do something that's already been done before. They're not coming up with novel ideas. They're not creating new inventions, right? They're not coming up with a brand new framework that's completely changing the industry. They're just using what already exists. And unfortunately, most of what already exists is really bad code. And now we're seeing that being forced into all of these products because of how much LLM generated slop is just being pushed out into the market. Now, don't get me wrong here. LLMs are absolutely necessary now. We have to use AI if we want to keep up, but the way in which a lot of developers and companies are using it can be more harmful than good and lead to a lot of really difficult to maintain and just strangely written software. And I think we're seeing that more and more. And I don't know, at least in my own perspective, it feels like there's just like a new hack every day, a new issue, a new exploit. And when you have AI writing its own software, there's all kinds of weird bugs and problems that pop up that are just really difficult for humans to solve. And this is going to become, in my opinion, a bigger and bigger issue as more and more code gets AI generated. Now, the last major thing that I've noticed over the past few months here is that the bottlenecks related to software development have moved. Now, previously, the bottleneck to developing software was writing the code. It was very expensive to have, a team of hundreds of engineers sitting there producing massive amounts of code, and it took, a non-trivial amount of time. We've now moved to the phase where code is cheap, but everything else isn't. So the scarce skills are things like system design, operational excellence, right? So observability, incident response, debugging in production, and judgment about trade-offs. Now, things like front end have had massive productivity gains because that's really where it's just writing a lot of code. Sure, there's a little bit of thinking, architecture, and design, but it's not as critical as something like back-end development, infrastructure, DevOps, deployment. So now the bottleneck is not really how much code can we write, it's how much code can we review, ensure is secure, and deploy and maintain in production with all of the features that we need. Now, this has really shifted the demand and need in the market for senior engineers that have those skills already, who have dealt with these issues in production and have the ability to orchestrate and manage multiple things at once. Now, that's why we've seen less demand for junior developers, because we don't just need a bunch of random features written anymore, which we typically delegate to them. We need that higher leverage task to be completed. So that means if you're someone who's trying to get into this market, as much as it's not easy or something you want to hear, these are really the skills that you need to focus on. Yes, you should still be able to write code, but it's not about how much code you produce now. It's about how good that code actually is. And again, those higher level skills that allow you to develop a scalable system that's actually going to be profitable and usable for a company. Now, I am genuinely very scared about what the future of software development is going to look like because of how much AI generated stuff we have and because of that loss of talent that I talked about before. All I can say is that keeping up to date, staying adaptable, keeping an open mind is more and more important, especially today than it's ever been before. And if you're a developer who's refusing to adapt, you will be left behind. And what we want to happen versus what needs to happen are two very different things. So as much as you might not love the new market that we're moving into, if you want to stay employable, you do need to stay up to date. You need to adapt, and that's really the only thing that you can do to make sure that you are going to be safe, still have a job, and hopefully still be able to provide for yourself and your family. Now, look, I don't want to just be doom and gloom here. Some of these things are incredibly positive. We're able to build much more than we ever could before. I think it is still an exciting time right now, but obviously it is uncertain, it is scary, and we just genuinely don't know what's going to happen next. So we need to stay kind of on the ball, adaptable, like I said, and just be ready for whatever occurs next. Anyways, guys, with that said, that's all I had for you. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.